Tuesday? Yes. Okay, yes, please, if you can. Thank you, there we go. Okay, today is Tuesday, January 30th, 2024. We have before us today AES LLC, case number 5278-3. This is for an interim variance, and we will be bifurcating this. So we will go for good cause first. And who is here on behalf of AES?
Good morning. Noah Perchahern with Greenberg Glusker on behalf of AES Alamitos LLC. And I have with me the Director of Operations for AES, Jose Perez, and then my colleague at Greenberg Glusker, Omar Corona, sitting to his left.
Thank you. And on behalf of the district?
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the board. Karen Manwaring on behalf of the district.
Thank you.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
You want to mention that Mr. Ali is on.
Yes,
On
yeah,
board.
just give me a chance. Okay, we will have Mr. Ali, who will be attending via remote, and I believe we need to, do we need to vote on whether he's going to
No.
attend
No,
or
no.
not? Okay, we're okay with that, but I don't see him.
Well, he's here.
Oh, hi, good morning.
He's
Okay,
here, he's here. All right,
all
thank you.
right, thank you. So we have the proposed variance conditions from the district, and we are going to be marking that as A. We have none before. And we did receive your PowerPoint. Are you going to be utilizing that as an exhibit?
Yes, Madam
Okay.
Chair.
All right, so marked, it'll be a number 1 for that. Okay. And will you be calling any witnesses?
Our plan is to call Mr. Perez, but that's sort of at the desire and preference of the board. If you feel that our presentation provides enough information to move forward on the variance for expediency and efficiency, we'd be happy to proceed on that. But if you'd like to hear from Mr. Perez, I'm prepared to elicit testimony and evidence to support the variance.
And Ms. Manwaring, are you going to have any witnesses?
Only at the board's direction. We have a witness from compliance and a witness from engineering, should you have questions for us.
Okay, great. So all those potential witnesses, if you can please stand and raise your right hand. Okay, do you swear under penalty of perjury that you will be telling the truth, the whole truth and nothing but the truth? Thank you. Okay, we can go ahead and proceed with the good cause. And sir, are you aware of what the good cause requirements are? So you will be including that in your opening statement?
Yes, I will.
Great. Okay, you can go ahead and proceed.
Okay, great. First of all, thank you for convening this morning on short notice for the interim variance, and that's going to lead to a short variance. We've been coordinating with the district counsel's office, and we've agreed to stipulated conditions, and that's Exhibit A. This is a simple case involving a variance for a pressure limit, and it has no bearing on emissions. And I'll explain some more details. So, great. So this is for AES Alamitos, and just quickly, I'm going to an overview of the presentation, which I'll go through expeditiously. I'm going to give you an overview of the facility, an overview of the equipment that's at issue in the variance, the relevant Title V permit conditions, and then I'm going to go through good cause. And if you are going to bifurcate, I can stop there, and we can discuss that, or I can proceed. There's a tremendous amount of overlap, almost a perfect amount of overlap between good cause and the variance elements. But at some point I'll go through the variance elements as well and the proposed conditions and then wrap up. Okay, so
we're just going to do for good cause.
sure.
And then merits of the case can go, if you pass that hurdle, then we'll go for the
Okay,
6 findings after that.
we'll
Go ahead.
we'll proceed accordingly. Thank you. AES Alamitos is in Long Beach, the Alamitos Long Beach area, This is a combined cycle gas turbine electric power generation facility. This is a new facility. It's been online for a couple of years now. There's a legacy power plant co-located, but today we're talking about the CCGT facility. And the only issue here is the so-called differential pressure limit associated with the selective catalytic reduction units. SCR is, I'm sure the board is aware, controls NOx emissions. It's the control technology here. Each heat recovery steam generator has an SCR unit. There's two of them. SCR, like I mentioned, controls NOx. That is measured by a continuous emissions monitoring system. There aren't any NOx issues here. I just want to make that clear. The SCR also has other monitoring parameters just to make sure that the sort of the maintenance is good. And that includes temperature and differential pressure. So here there was a little bit of a spike at the very end of December. And this indicates a maintenance need that is planned in April, and it's not an emissions issue that will be remedied by a routine cleaning of the catalyst bed. So we can move on to the permit conditions. The main permit condition is really D1211, and there's a numeric limit of 1.6 inches in the water column for pressure differential. We've also sought a variance for some general provisions and an abundance of caution since that are really derivative of the D1211, and that's just to maintain the equipment in good operating order. And that would be sections E2 and E5 of the Title V. So just quickly, this is a timeline from 2013 through 2020. There was permitting in the paperwork, construction, and then commissioning of this new CCGT facility. In January 21, they became operational, fully operational. And that's when they started measuring the DP limit against the Title V permit. There were no issues for, I guess 3 years. And then there was an anomalous reading at the end of last month. And the facility took immediate action to investigate that, performs instrumentation checks, and ultimately around the middle of January, realized that there was a potential for non-compliance, and then looked into the options and decided on bringing a variance, and within a matter of days, filed this variance last week. So we can move on to the interim variance standard. The board knows this like the back of its hand, but we're gonna look at good cause. We're gonna stop there, bifurcate, then we'll talk about the elements for a variance. Just here, I just want to make clear, and I'll get into this a little more. We're ultimately seeking a short variance because the issue will be non-compliance will be remedied within 90 days based on a planned outage occurring in April. And so we are on calendar for February 21st. I'm hoping we can do that on the consent agenda. But because there will be non-compliance starting tomorrow, there's about 3 weeks of interim relief we're seeking for a variance here.
Okay, and what we normally have the companies go through is the actual good cause findings. There are 4 of them. And we do need you to go through them so you can establish to us that you indeed have good cause.
Absolutely. And so for that first element, that we will be in violation of a dish that we are or will be, there's a monthly monitoring limit. And as of tomorrow, that will cement for the differential pressure. So as of tomorrow, we'll be non-compliant with that condition D1211. And I went through some of the facts, but we first detected this anomalous reading in late December. We investigated the cause, confirmed the non-compliance in mid-January, and brought action right away in terms of this variance application. So we can go to the second factor. which is the violation could not reasonably have been avoided or anticipated in sufficient time to provide public notice. This is the first incident of its kind for this facility. I showed you the timeline. There weren't any issues for 2 years. And as soon as there was an anomalous spike, AES took immediate action. It's been performing routine maintenance and it could not have prevented this. This just suddenly occurred. There's no prior indications of any issues. And AES investigated this and it could not, right away, urgently, and it could not have been reasonably discovered sooner. Can go to the next one. Yeah, and this is largely similar, right? AES exercised, extraordinary amount of diligence. It convened its internal team right away to determine the options, assessed different options, including curtailment and an outage, and quickly engaged legal counsel to file a variance. Again, this all happened within a matter of days. Had we had more time, I think we could have gotten this done on the consent agenda, but we just didn't have enough time.
That concludes your comments, sir?
No, let me,
Just for good cause?
yeah, just for good cause. The last point here is that the denial of the interim variance will result in unreasonable and unavoidable adverse impact. AES is going to rectify this issue in April. If it were forced to address this noncompliance now, there'd have to be a 3-day outage and AES would incur over $1 million in economic loss. And I just want to point out once again, there's no environmental benefit from a variance denial here. There aren't any emissions issues. This is a monitoring provision that is not having an environmental impact. So with that said, we can, so the good cause is met here. Noncompliance is going to occur tomorrow. Couldn't have been reasonably avoided because this was an unprecedented situation for the facility. They investigated immediately, confirmed the issue, and sought a variance right away. And the denial of the variance would result in over $1 million in economic loss. So I'm prepared. I've got Mr. Perez here, the Director of Operations for AES, and we can provide his testimony, which will be consistent with this. And it's sort of at your preference of whether you believe that with our application and this presentation you have enough, or whether you'd like to hear from Mr. Perez, and I can ask questions if you'd like to proceed in that manner.
What we will do first is give the district the opportunity to give us their opening statements.
Madam Chair, I'm sorry. Did the gentleman give his name and information? I don't have the spelling and all of
If
that.
you could spell your name, sir, for the clerk.
I'm sorry.
Sorry about that. It's Noah Perch Ahern. My last name is spelled Perch Ahern. I'm a partner with the law firm Greenberg Glusker.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Ms. Manwaring?
Good morning. The district appreciates Mr. Perchehern's thorough opening. The district is unopposed to a finding of good cause.
Thank you. Okay, so with that, we can start with your first witness, sir.
I'd like to call Jose Perez, Director of Operations for AES Alamitos.
If you could take your PowerPoint down, please, sir. Thank you.
Take this on. There we go. Good morning, Mr. Perez. Could you please describe your role at AES and responsibilities for the AES power plant?
Before we do that, if you could please spell your name for the clerk and also give us your title and how long you've worked there and the fact that you took the oath.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Jose Perez. It's spelled Jose Perez. I'm the Director of Operations for AES Southland, and I've been with AES since 2000, and I did take the oath.
Go ahead, sir.
Mr. Perez, could you briefly describe your role at AES and the responsibilities that you have?
Yes, as I've said, I was the Director of Operations, which includes oversight of the operations of our legacy fleets at Alamitos in Long Beach, Huntington Beach, and Redondo Beach, and also includes our new constructions of our gas turbines in Huntington Beach and Alamitos as well.
And maybe we can just take a step back and just quickly, if you could describe your professional, educational background and your experience in the power sector.
Sure. I started out in the U.S. Navy. I was in the nuclear power program. After 6 years there, I worked for Air Products and Chemicals as a control room operator, and I've been with AES since 2000 and held various roles in various locations in Southland, from control room operator to team leader to site leader to now director. And along the way, I've gotten a Bachelor of Science degree from University of State of New York and an MBA from Pepperdine.
And in your, I guess, 23 or 24 years with the company, you've, in your role as the director of operations, you've got significant knowledge of the facilities permits, including the Title V. Is that right?
That's correct.
And you're quite familiar, of course, with the power plant's technology and its equipment.
Yes, I am.
And maybe you could just, for the hearing board, I think it'd be helpful, give a quick orientation of the CCGT and the SCR.
Sure. The CCGT consists of two GE gas turbines, along with a Siemens steam turbine and two Hercigs from Vogt. It makes 674 megawatts. It runs daily and shuts down and starts up daily. The SCR is a piece of pollution control equipment that removes NOx from the gas turbine exhaust.
And there's two SCR units, is that right?
Yes, one in each Hersig.
Okay. And we're here to discuss the pressure gauge and differential pressure. I may say DP instead of differential pressure at times, the limit. Could you describe the purpose of the pressure gauge and that DP monitoring?
Yeah, we have the SCR has an inlet pressure gauge and an outlet pressure gauge, and the difference between those two it results in the differential pressure.
And it's the pressure is, and the differential pressure is monitored continuously. Is that right?
Yes, it's monitored continuously in the control room, and it's recorded continuously, and there are alarms associated with that reading.
And there's a monthly limit set in the Title V permit. Is that based on the average of the monthly readings? Is that right?
Yes, yes, it is.
And the DP doesn't indicate that the emissions control isn't working, right?
No, it's more of an indication of cleanliness, I would say, across the SCR, just like a filter, if you had a filter there.
Okay. And you've got we'll get into this in a minute, but you have a planned outage that's going to address that cleanliness, right?
That's correct. We plan to do a very extensive cleaning during our April hot gas path outage.
And other monitoring parameters are measuring the performance of the SCR, including the NOx emissions. And all those parameters have been normal since this DP issue came up?
That's correct. And we also have ammonia flow limits and also SCR temperature limits.
Okay. So just to sort of get into some of what I was describing in the presentation, AES detected a bit of a spike in the DP around late December. Is that right?
Yeah, we started seeing the trend increase at that time.
And then you took steps to check the instruments and to investigate whether there was actually an issue with the pressure gauges and the DP.
Yeah. First of all, we want to make sure that an indication's real and the trend looks real, and the trend looked real. We started to calibrate all our instruments as well, including even making sure there wasn't any water in the lines, giving us a false reading and blowing those lines back into the Hersig. So everything checked out good. So we believe it's a real rating.
And so that checking and the investigation occurred in basically the first half of January, and by the week of January 15th, you concluded there was a maintenance issue. Is that right?
Yes.
And then you convened a team to come up with a path forward, and you executed on this decision to seek a variance right away. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And prior to this month, you've never had a problem meeting the monthly limit for the differential pressure. Is that right?
Yeah, we've never had that. We've never exceeded that limit before.
And in the past, your annual maintenance has been sufficient to keep the DP limits within the permit standards, right?
Yes, yes, it has been previously.
And prior to the first anomalous reading in December, there was no indication that you would have a DP issue coming up.
No, no, we started seeing the trend go up, but we're really monitoring closely in January to see if it would stabilize and flatten or continue to increase slightly.
And you said that this is basically just a cleaning issue. You got to clean out the catalyst and the SCR system. And that's not affecting the performance of the SCR system, just to be sure, right?
That's correct. We have extremely tight limits on the SCR, on all our other limits, so they're all within spec.
Right. And you have a planned outage scheduled in April, during which time you're going to do a cleaning overhaul, correct?
Yeah, we're going to do a very extensive cleaning with obviously vacuuming out and also using dry ice.
Okay. So that maintenance is going to happen regardless of whether you had to do an earlier maintenance, right?
Yeah, that's correct. If we had to clean the SCR right now, if we had done that, we would have done more of a vacuuming just to get us below the DP, but we would have still had to do the more extensive cleaning during our outage.
And if a variance were denied, maybe you could walk me through what would happen. You'd have to go to CAISO, the grid operator. You'd have to get an outage. Maybe you could tell us how long that outage would take, and what that process would look like.
Yeah, we would we would submit a planned outage. And so we would have to go get replacement power. Many times this time of the year, there is no replacement power. So that would just depend on if we could get it. So if we could not find replacement power, the CAISO would deny our outage, and then we would submit a forced outage, and so we would see if the CAISO would approve that. That would probably be the process.
And the maintenance here, if you were to get the outage, it would take 3 days. Is that right, approximately?
We believe it would take 3 days. Mainly, you need to cool the HRSG off because people are going to go inside. It's very hot. And then you'd have to build scaffolding up there once the temperatures are within, the humans can be in there. And then you have to build it up pretty high. I want to say it's about 100 feet.
And the system would be down during that 3 days. You would not be providing electricity. Is that right?
Correct. Yeah, we would do both HRSGs at the same time. And so the facility would be offline for 3 days.
And so some of the economic costs would include maintenance and lost electricity sales, correct?
That's correct, yes.
And have you calculated the total economic loss that you believe AES would suffer if a variance were denied?
Yeah, it would be over $1 million. Now, some of those losses would be shared with a partner, of course, but it would still be very significant with one partner, with significant for AES, obviously.
And has AES considered curtailment as an alternative?
Yeah, but it's more of an impact from a megawatt perspective. So we're better because of the duration that you'd need to restrict for. So if we had to take the unit down or restrict it, we would try to shut the unit down instead.
Okay. And even if you were able to do that, the costs there would still be over $1 million associated with curtailment, you believe?
Yeah, the total losses are over $1 million.
Okay. So I think that concludes what we need for a good cause. And so I would ask the board, or if district council has any questions, we can turn it over.
Yes, that's what we normally do. Ms. Van Ooring?
The district may have questions for this witness as to the merits, but we have no questions as to good cause. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Board members? Mr. Balagopalan?
Yeah, a couple of questions for the determination of good cause. And one is whether you're in violation. You said you'll be probably in violation tomorrow, as far as the delta P being above the 1.6 inches. Or when will you be in violation of that condition?
Once the month ends and the monthly average is calculated, we will be over the limit.
And what you did need, how much over will you be?
I believe we're riding around 1.7 right now, 1.7, 1.8.
Was it 1.8? Okay.
But I would have to get the exact number from our engineers.
But less than 2 inch?
Yes.
Okay. Then the other question regarding due diligence, it says in your timeline, end of December through January 19, is that when you realize that there's going to be an issue going forward, January 19th, and then that's when you decided to file for the interim variance? I'm trying to get the significance of the January 19th, the date in your timeline.
I can just take a stab at that. What was intended by that in the timeline was that was the culmination of the process, checking, so there was an anomalous reading, the first spike, it's a continuous monitoring system. So it looks pretty static, right? And then at the end of December, they saw a spike and they said, well, what's going on? I think maybe there's something wrong with the instrumentation. They ran multiple checks and they realized that it looks actually like a spike by around the week of January 15th. That week, the team, the AS team convened, and it was by the end of the week that a decision was made to move forward on the variance. And then it took a few days to get it on file.
And again, so your witness, I'm asking the question. January 19th is when that determination was made. Is that there was an issue?
I believe so, yeah. We were initially meeting and then talking about what we've checked, what can it be, is this real, doing all that. And then you get to the point where, okay, we need to seek outside counsel advice on this.
And I see by the date stamp you filed on January 24th. So within about 5-6 days, you filed for the interim variance.
Yes.
Okay. All right. That's all I had question on this phase, and the rest of the questions I'll do it in the week. 6 findings.
Any other questions, board members?
Yes.
Mr. Pearman?
So how is the cost of doing an outage now, which you estimate would have a loss of $1 million, different from doing the outage in April that you planned?
During April, we're going to have a very extensive hot gas path outage, and including a entire plant outage. That's going to be roughly 18 days. So that's already scheduled, and that's a timeline that's built, and that's how long it's going to take. That's really fast outage for a hot gas path. And so we're able to fit that cleaning in there with no additional impact.
But won't you lose money in the same fashion during that 18-day outage? I don't understand.
Yes, but that's already a budgeted item, and so we've already scheduled it. The CAISO has approved that outage. We've lined up all our people, and GE's lined up, and so that's a budgeted event that we have to do.
But if you did an outage now just to deal with this situation, when you have to do that part of it in April, so you'd save some money, wouldn't you?
No, if we did the cleaning right now, we would do a faster cleaning in about 3 days. And so once we went in there, we had already planned to do a more of extensive cleaning this year. And so we would still execute on that. And we would incur not only our regular planned outage that we're planning to take, but we would end up taking an additional 3-day outage now.
Thank you.
Sir, in reference to the unit itself, the overall unit, are you considered on-demand peak power versus base load? Or are you part of base load?
It varies. I mean, we typically are offline in the middle of the day when the solar is highest. And there's typically a window, and there are 6-hour window. It varies, but we end up providing for sure peak load in the evening and especially in the morning. But the units are typically loaded pretty high on load when they're online.
Mm-hmm. And based on the type of newer generating station that you are you deployed sooner? Well, how can I explain it? Are you deployed sooner than the other ones are based on the fact that you're a cleaner plant?
Yeah, if you mean the other facilities that are our legacy facilities at AES, yeah, those are part of the strategic reserve now. And so they will only be called upon either for testing from us or from the ISO, or they'll run during an emergency event using ISO procedures.
Do you know, in reference to all of the other stations that contribute to the grid the way that you do, where you fall? Do you fall on the ones that are deployed first versus the other ones in the state?
I would say our gas turbine is deployed quite a bit. So it runs a lot, mainly because it's probably the probably one of the cheapest powers out there, I would say, because of it being one of the latest combined cycles. I don't know if there's another newer combined cycle in California.
Yeah, I haven't heard of one either. Thank you. Okay, any other questions, board members? Okay, on the timeline, I think what the board members are trying to nail down also is we're normally given specific dates. But you gave us between the 15th through the 19th, that when you actually convened that team, and then within 4 days, us came to the assessment that you needed to file with the district. And you filed on the 24th. So I think that's a fair estimate of how long it takes to go through the process, as well as getting a hold of your upper management and discussing it with them as well. I'm sure they were part of the decision-making process, correct?
Yeah, that's correct. I informed my manager or of what we were doing and what was going on. Yes.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions, board members? None. Okay. All right. With that, we can go to, all right. I'm going to ask the clerk if there are any other members of the public who are online who want to either make a comment or provide testimony.
Currently, Madam Chair, there are no members on Zoom with their hands raised, and I've not received any cards, and there appears to be no members of the public in person to make comments or testimony.
Thank you. Okay. All right. So with that, we can go to closing statements from Mr., is it Perch Ahern?
Yes,
Okay.
thank you, Madam Chair. I think we've presented the case in a persuasive way. Non-compliance is going to occur tomorrow. We're over the DP limit. It couldn't have been reasonably avoided. It's unprecedented at the facility. There's no prior indication that the violation would occur. AES moved really immediately. I just want to mention also there was a January 19th was the culmination of that investigative process. That's a Friday. So they filed the following, I think, Tuesday. So, there was a weekend there. And I think 4 or 5 days is very diligent, and shows dispatch in either event. And this would result in an additional cost of over $1 million. They're going to incur the costs associated with the outage in April. Either way, this is an additional cost that without the variance, it's going to cost AES over $1 million, which just simply is disproportionate in light of what's at issue here. And there's no emissions. So that wraps up our presentation for good cause.
Thank you. Ms. Manoring.
Thank you. Compliance with the permit condition D12.11 is a monthly average. So based on the evidence and testimony we heard, it clearly seems like diligence was established in their filing. And we have no opposition to a finding of good cause to proceed to the merits.
Thank you. Okay. Board members, we want to go ahead and start deliberation on this. I, for one, feel that there has been good cause that was established based on the timeline that they gave us, but also in reference to their due diligence of convening a team right away and making sure that they were recognizing what was actually occurring, contacting their upper management, and then filing with the district. Any other comments, board members? Mr. Balagopalan?
Yes, going through the 4 findings, a little confused, but because Mr. Heron said they will be violation tomorrow, but Mr. Silva said they've already exceeded 1.6. And regardless, the finding we have to make is whether they're in violation or imminently in violation. Either way, you meet one of the 2 Cook criteria, and so that's the first finding. The second finding was that could not have been avoided. It appears from previous maintenance this was not an issue, and it suddenly they noticed an anomaly. And then I think the third one, whether I agree with you, Madam Chair, that they were diligent in filing once they determined that there was going to be an issue, they filed in within a week the petition for the interim, and the denial of the variance would have an adverse impact on the public health because of providing power, and it makes sense to do it during the planned outage versus taking it offline for 3 days now. So for all those reasons, I too can find good cause and proceed to the next phase.
Any other comments, board members?
I also find good cause.
Okay. All right, did you want to go ahead and make the motion?
I can make the motion. All right, bear with me. This is one of my first times doing this. So in the matter of AES Alamitos, IED number 115394, cycle 1, case number 52783, for the facility located at 690 North Studebaker Road, Long Beach, California 90803, regarding permit numbers 608431 and 608432 for the two respective catalysts that were mentioned. I move that we grant good cause for interim variance until the hearing of the regular variance can be established in February, future date. And I move that we proceed so that we can discuss the merits of the 6 findings, given all the points that were stated earlier, that they'll be in violation exceeding that differential pressure that they they have reasonably tried to avoid and anticipate and address this issue proactively and preemptively, and that they've exercised due diligence in its filing. And lastly, that there's this disproportionate, unreasonable, unavoidable harm of $1 million in economic losses that could be avoided. So for all of those reasons, I move that we find good cause.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, if I may just add to your, I think we just need to find good cause to move forward to the interim variance. So in the absence of notice to the public that we find good cause, that's all we have to do at this phase. And then I think the other, when we go to the good cause, the 6 finding, that what you said is more
Perfect.
appropriate
So
at
I'll
that time.
amend that as Mr. Balagopalan stated. So really that we move so that we can, given the lack of public notice, that we can actually move forward with the interim variance until we can actually have the regular variance hearing.
I'll be seconds.
Thank you. Okay. Any discussion on the motion? All right, if not, Mr. Balagopalan, how do you vote?
Yes.
Mr. Pearman,
Aye.
Mr. Ali,
Aye.
Dr. Abraham?
Aye.
And I also vote aye. So unanimously, we can go on to good cause. I'm sorry, the 6 findings. Okay, and with that, we're kind of going to follow the same process, only we will be finding it for the 6 findings. So if you want to go ahead and give us the same format, excuse me, of the of making your opening statements for that, for the 6 findings.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So we'll jump into it. Let's move on to the first element. There's a lot of overlap, so I'll try to be brief. First, that AES will be in violation, is or will be. So the clarification that I just want to make sure that we understand is that the monthly average cannot be finally calculated until tomorrow. So even though as of today, we're at 1.7 or 1.8, it's not a technical non-compliance until you can actually establish what the monthly monitoring is. That's how I understand the permit condition. So I think that accounts for maybe some of the confusion in the testimony. We can move on. This is that is a violation of the 1.6 in D1211. So this is due to conditions beyond the petitioner's reasonable control, and compliance would result in an arbitrary, unreasonable taking of property and a shutdown here of at least 3 days. So the issue arose suddenly. This was unprecedented. There weren't any other prior incidents involving a DP spike or anomalous reading. And as Mr. Perez has testified to, this would require a 3-day outage. There's already an outage scheduled in April that's going to take care of this minor maintenance issue. There would be a loss of electric supply to the grid, and all of the costs would exceed $1 million to AES to have to address it right now, and would shut down the facility for at least 3 days. There's no benefit. I've mentioned this a couple of times just because I thought it in terms of good cause, because I thought it was important for the the board to understand for orientation, but we're not talking about an emissions issue. The SCR system is operating as it's supposed to. NOx emissions are absolutely normal and reduced to permitted levels. So we're not going to have excess emissions. There's not going to be an increase in emissions. This has no bearing on emissions, and the facility is already reducing air contaminants pursuant to its Title V permit. And as we pointed out, the AES has considered curtailment. That wouldn't be reasonable here. They'd have to reduce the amount of power supplied to a level that would maybe not even be accepted by the grid operator. So there would be potential grid impacts there. And also, this is no less costly to AES. This alternative, as Mr. Perez testified to, would also cause AES a loss of at least $1 million. We can move on. AES has reduced its emissions to the maximum extent feasible. Like I said, this is not an air emissions issue. It's all permit conditions relating to emissions are complied with. And the facility has had no emissions, so issues reducing emissions to date. And then finally, AES has entered into proposed conditions. I thank you to the district council's office for over the weekend working with us to finalize those. I really appreciate that. And we've submitted those to the board. We're going to continue to be in full compliance. Those are stipulated conditions, and all those conditions will be abided by through the variance period, which is through April of this year. So finally, with that, I think I can save this conclusion for concluding remarks.
All right, Ms. Van Ooring.
District waives opening as to the merits and will be prepared to question the witness when the time comes.
Thank you. Okay, so are you going to be presenting Mr. Perez again as your one and only witness?
Yes, Madam Chair. And I would intend to simply submit his prior testimony, which I think covers all the bases, if the board were so inclined to allow.
So moved. Yes.
Okay. So with that, I have no questions, but I would reserve the right to ask questions and rebuttal if necessary.
Okay. Ms. Van Ooring, you have any questions for this witness?
Just a couple, and I'll try to also be expedient. Mr. Perjahern, regarding the presentation that you have made for us today, did Mr. Perez have an opportunity to participate or review the presentation?
Yes, he did.
Okay. I'm going to ask Mr. Perez, do you agree with everything that's been presented in the presentation?
Yes, I do.
All right. Would we have any objection to marking it as an exhibit and having it admitted as an exhibit?
No, I think it did. We may have already, well, we may need to mark it again for this phase of the proceeding, but yeah, no, we have no objection.
Okay.
So moved. We can go ahead and mark it as exhibit 1.
All right. Thank you for that. I just have a couple questions, and really they've been hit on, but I'd like to hear them straight from the witness, if that's okay. Your counsel just explained how permit condition D12.11 relies on a monthly average. So would you agree that the anomaly in DP observed in December was a single snapshot in time, and that compliance with your permit condition requires a monthly average?
Yes, the compliance is a monthly average. And anytime we look at it, it's, we're looking at it in that moment in time.
All right. I heard some testimony already in response to Mr. Bullock-Kaplan's question. Are you able to give us any more information around the specifics, like how high was the anomaly in December, or is that something that you don't have readily available?
I don't have that readily available, only that, the control room monitors those screens. So they start seeing, hey, they know what the limit is. They start seeing the trend going up. And so they'll contact our environmental manager.
Okay. When you said, when you testified that, no, it is not above 2 inches in the water column yet, was that your understanding of the average to date, or was that your understanding of all observed measurements? In other words, are you aware of it exceeding 2 inches at any point between December and now?
No, it has not reached that. I believe we just verified that it's running about 1.7 on both DPs right now.
Okay, thank you. That gives me kind of an understanding of the magnitude of the difference, so thank you. At this point, prior to the cleaning and the maintenance, do you have any understanding or do you have an expectation of what the cause was?
No, we'll know once we go in there and to clean it. We believe it's real, so it could be anything from contaminants in the fuel. It could be contaminants from the ammonia process going in there, or it could be maybe insulation falling off and kind of blocking it or something like that. But we'll know once we get in there and start cleaning it up.
Is there any reason to think that going forward, you might need to increase the frequency of cleaning or maintenance on these units?
Yeah, I mean, depending on what we find, we'll ask our engineers to come up with a better method so we can remain compliant. And that's why also we're looking to do a more of an extensive clean. Before we hadn't used dry ice, so we're gonna do what we normally do and then try to clean even more than what we normally have in the past. So that's our plan right now.
Okay. Did you have an opportunity to look at Exhibit A, the district's proposed conditions?
Yes.
And AES is able to agree to and comply with these conditions as you stipulated to?
Yes.
Okay, I have no further questions for this witness. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Manwaring. Okay. Sir, did you, when looking at the conditions, not only relate them to what was occurring at the facility itself, but going forward, how you're going to be able to not only adhere to the conditions, but I think this also gives you an idea of what the district is looking for as well for any possible future events. So were there any concerns in that matter, in that regard?
I don't believe so. I don't believe so.
Okay, all right. Board members, Mr. Pearman?
What's the dates, if you have it, of the scheduled April outage?
I can check here really quick. I would have to get back to you on that one. We can look it up right now, but
That's pretty firm, though. It's a firm time in
Yeah.
April.
yeah. So that's approved. Here we go. It starts April 2nd through April 19th.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, one more question I had was, in reference to this particular outage, was CalISO notified
On our,
in this incident?
no, we have not spoken with the ISO on this.
Is there a requirement to?
No.
Okay.
No.
Any other questions? Mr. Belagopalan?
Yes, Mr. Silva, I'm a little confused. When you said the control room is monitoring the delta P continuously. So there's some indication at any time what the delta P is on the control panel somewhere?
Yeah. So those gauges go into our DCS, which is our computers that monitor the whole plant. And that feeds another computer system. I believe it's called a DAS. And then that goes into an HMI, a separate HMI where the operators are seeing all the environmental limits and where they're at.
And does it do the monthly average calculation then? Or
Yeah, they have
is it running?
Yeah, the DAS computer calculates and they're seeing the monthly average where we're at.
Okay. Because when I look at the condition, I don't know if you have that D 12.11 in front of you, or if you can.
Would you like us to put it up on the screen?
Yeah, if you could, that way, you know, and it's not just the, well, the whole condition if you have it.
Slide 5. Maybe we can blow it up.
Oh, yeah, okay. So it says operator shall install and maintain a device to continually monitor the parameter measured, which is indicated. Now, continuous record shall be defined as measuring at least once each month and shall be calculated based on the average of the continuous monitoring for that month. So that's where I'm saying, you know, it says at least once. So if you do it only once, then you're really not having an average for that month, you know. But you're saying it is actually continuously monitoring and calculating the average running total, running average for the month moving forward, is that?
Yeah, I mean,
the average kind of.
yeah, our environmental manager has been able to provide me this is where we're at right now on the monthly average. So I'm assuming that that's an ongoing calculation.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you're doing, okay. So even though it says once a month, you actually, it's a continuous monitoring, which you indicated. Now, let me ask you this. What about, at what point it becomes a concern? Let's say this average, your delta P keeps going, it's 1.71, you know, goes high. At what point does it raise a concern that it might affect your back pressure, operational equipment, that you may have a bigger issue?
Well, when we start seeing the trend, you know, we know what the limit is, and all of a sudden you start seeing the trend go towards that limit. That's when it becomes an issue for us from a, hey, you're going to exceed the limit at the end of the month. But we haven't seen any indication as far as like with that there's any issue occurring with any of the emissions control equipment as far as maintaining other limits.
Oh, so you're talking about when you say limit, the NOx limit and other monitoring the emission limit. I'm not talking about actually operational issues that as far as back pressure, if there was going to be from if the delta P keeps going up, you know, at what point does that become a concern that you may say, hey, okay, we need to shut down or something like that, you know?
Well, typically on all our other units, we don't even have a DP limit on it. So we typically do our due diligence and clean those annually, and then really focus on making sure all our NOx limits, ammonia flow limits, you know, everything else is in spec. And so I wouldn't expect that we would have a neck issue on those because again, we haven't had an issue in any of other units with it from a DP. And we burn primarily very clean natural gas, but you do get some impurities in there occasionally. But I wouldn't expect an issue from that perspective.
Okay. Now you did mention the ammonia injection rate, right? That you monitor that too?
Yeah, ammonia flow is one of our limits.
One of the limits. So,
yeah.
And that's something I don't see it as part of your condition. Is that also done automatically, continuously, the injection rate when you're operating?
Yes, that's being measured all the time. And that's an hourly limit.
It's an hourly limit,
Yeah.
So do you have an issue providing that a modified condition number 2 to also include, besides the pressure differential, also the ammonia flow limit once a week to the agency?
Yeah, I mean, we can do that.
Do that, okay. All right. I think that's the only questions I had. Thank you.
Any other questions, board members? Mr. Pearman?
Not for a petition, no.
Okay, no questions. Mr. Ali, did you have any questions? Mr. Ali? Okay, we might chime in later. Mr. Pearman, you had a question of the district in regards to the conditions?
So condition 4, which says they must shut down the gas turbine before necessary SCR maintenance. If the NOx emissions exceed the permit limit as a direct result of an elevated pressure differential. So if they were to exceed the limits for some other reason, then what? They'd have to come in for a different type of variance, et cetera, et cetera?
That would be the facility's discretion to seek a variance if the NOx emission limit exceeded for some reason unrelated to this. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
And if I may, I actually was able to have a conversation with council prior to we started, because I actually was wanted a little bit more information on that condition myself. And we've heard the testimony. There's no understanding or indication that this situation will impact NOx emissions, but this condition is kind of a boots and strap, boots and suspenders situation, right? We don't think it's going to be an issue, but if it is, take care of it. That's essentially why that condition is there.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Manwaring. Are there any other questions that you had, Mr. Balagopalan?
Yeah, I was wondering if, if the district can propose a condition for, if it thinks it's needed to propose a condition to do the ammonia
Mr. Balakon, if you think it's necessary after I redirect, we'll bring up Mr. Perry to talk about that condition.
Okay.
But may I redirect?
Sure.
All right, Mr. Pres, do you have the permit in front of you? I'd like to draw your attention to condition D12.9. Mr. Perry pointed out to me that there actually is already a condition regarding ammonia reporting. So I would just like to have us look at D12.9 to see if that satisfies your concerns or if crafting a new condition is necessary. I'm directing their attention to a lengthy permit. We might want to just take a 5-minute break to let them look at that, find it, and then opine as to whether or not an additional reporting requirement above and beyond that permit condition makes sense.
It's 10:35 right now. Why don't we just take our morning 15-minute break? So we're off the clock for 15 minutes.
All right, thank you.
Okay, Ms. Mannering, you had a question you wanted resolved?
After speaking with district staff and conferring with council on the facility, in responding to Mr. Balaklhan's suggestion of looking at a reporting requirement around ammonia, Mr. Balaklhan, what the district would be interested in knowing is if their condition is deviated from. Currently, they have a condition D12.9 that requires hourly averages, continuous monitoring and hourly averages. Reporting that compliance to us is not of interest. But if they deviate from that permit condition, that is something that we would want. Thank you for the suggestion. And the district council has agreed, we're working through the language right now, a condition that says facilities shall continue to comply with D12.9, but if they deviate from the hourly limit, the hourly rate established in that condition, they shall report via email to district staff. Right.
And that's going to be included in today's condition?
We're going to make a revision to Exhibit A to add the condition. And again, this helps that boots and suspenders approach that we talked about. There's no number on the DP that would make everyone go, this is the problem, right? If the differential got, the delta of the differential got so big, we would expect eventually down the line there to be possibly an impact on the NOx emissions. And that's what we would be looking to. So as long as they stay compliant with the ammonia condition and don't exceed the NOx limit, waiting until April to do the maintenance is not of concern. If they have to exceed that ammonia condition in order to stay within the NOx limits, we would want that information. So thank you for bringing that issue up.
Does that satisfy your question?
Yes, I think that's an excellent suggestion because there's no NOx. I mean, ammonia SEMS there is for NOx. So the only way you can tell if the ammonia slip is by monitoring the flow. And if the flow deviates, that's fine. I did have a quick question though for the engineer on that condition, just a clarification on that condition.
All right, well,
The
introduce Mr. Perry
AQMD,
then.
the AQMD engineer?
AQMD engineer, yeah.
Just procedurally, we're done with your witnesses. On to as to the merits.
Well, are we? Are we done with your witnesses?
I have no questions.
Okay. Yes or no?
All right, the district would like to introduce Mr. Chris Perry, permitting engineer. Mr. Perry, would you please state and spell your name?
Chris Perry, last name is Perri.
And what's your position with the district?
Air quality engineer
How long have you been employed with the district?
since 1991.
And did you have an opportunity to review the petition before us today?
Yes,
Did you contribute towards to crafting the proposed conditions in Exhibit A?
yes.
All right, no questions for this witness, I defer.
Okay. Do you have questions for this witness, sir?
No questions.
Okay, board members, Mr. Balagopalan.
Yes, morning, Mr. Perry.
Morning.
I just had a clarification on that condition D 12.11.
Okay.
Because it says, you have that in front of you.
Yes.
It says, shall install and maintain to indicate the delta P across SCR continuously recorded. And then, so the shall install and maintain the device to continuously record the parameter been measured. Now, continuous record shall be defined at least once every month. Should it be once every day or what? What is every?
Yeah, I think looking at the wording now, I would say that probably it could be improved a little bit. This is a condition we've used for a long time on our permits. And in my experience, we've never had any problems with facilities complying with this. So we haven't had a chance to really look in detail about how it's worded. But I think the purpose of it was to just have them report to us once a month. And we understand that the operators actually do monitor this on a continuous basis, but we're actually not asking them to do that. We think it's an important parameter for them to keep track of, but not important enough that we think it needs to be monitored continuously. So I think that's why we're asking for once per month and at least monitor once per month. That's an option that they can do. We understand that they do it more often than that. So yeah, the condition maybe could be worded a little bit differently, but it is just a once per month number that we're asking for.
To report.
Yes. Well, to keep track of.
To keep
You don't
track of.
actually have to report to us, but
Right.
they have to have the records that
Okay.
they did it.
Yeah, because doing once a month is not continuous, recording, I mean.
Right.
Yeah, okay.
Right.
Okay. So that's something that you maybe look at it, rewording maybe.
Yeah, it could be worded a little bit better, I
Okay.
think.
That's
Yeah.
all. I was a little confused when I saw that language.
Yeah, it
That's
is
all.
kind of confusing.
When Mr. Silva said the control room is continuously monitoring it, you know.
Right.
Okay, all right, thank you. I have no further questions.
Thank you, sir. Okay, did we have any other witnesses you wanted to present?
No, if I could just ask a clarifying question of Mr. Perry. So just so I understand, Mr. Perry, under D 1211 as it's currently worded, the wording could be improved upon. But your understanding is that the requirement isn't necessarily continuous monitoring. It's a once a month at a minimum monitoring. So the facility has to monitor the differential pressure at least once a month. Continuous monitoring is optional. Is that correct?
Yes, so they have to at least take one snapshot of that pressure during the month and record that. And that's the minimum under the way the conditions worded. That's the minimum that they would have to do.
Okay, no further questions. Thank you.
And that's done once a month at the end of the month. Correct? That's done once a month at the end of the month. I'm sorry, you do it every day, but to actually report it, it's at once a month.
I don't think the reporting is, I don't know when the reporting is for the, I don't know if it's monthly reporting. It's probably semi-annual reporting. That's my guess.
I'm not so much asking what you report to the district as much as you do it internally, because there was a mention that it was done daily, and then that you were even waiting for a number by tomorrow, which would be the end of the month.
The way it's currently performed is it's a continuous monitoring system.
Mhm.
And so at any given time, the average is calculated. And so the way the facility has been handling this is to take the average at the very end of the month, and that will be measured against the limit.
Okay. All right, that clears it up. Any other questions, board members? Okay, with that, we can go ahead and take your closing statement, unless you had something else, Ms. Van Oring?
I think we should propose a new condition
Okay.
before we go into closing.
Okay,
Let's give counsel and his client a moment to see what I just scratched out to make sure it's
okay.
consistent.
And also before we go into closing, that we ask whether there are any members of the public who have any comment or testimony they want to provide. Madam Clerk?
Standard, right? 20 to 40.
Madam Chair, there are currently no members of the public with hands raised for comments or testimony. I have not received any cards, and there appears to be no members in person with comments or testimony.
Thank you.
20, between 20 and 42.
This is just the number. That's in the record.
Okay.
Madam Chair, if it's amenable, I'm going to actually bring the witness back to read the proposed condition that we'll be adding to Exhibit A.
Perfect. Go
All
ahead.
right, because he's the one looking at the permit condition and knows what it means.
Right.
All
Okay.
right, Mr. Perry, could you please read the new proposed condition that the parties have agreed to add to Exhibit A?
Okay. Petitioner shall comply with permit condition.
I'm sorry, Mr. Perry. Oh, I'm sorry. We're going to add this as condition 5 and renumber 5 to 6.
When they're ready.
Okay. Petitioner shall comply with permit condition D 12.9. And if the injection rate deviates from the permitted range of 20 to 242 pounds per hour, petitioner shall report via email the deviation to Ms. Ramirez and Mr. Lee at the emails listed in condition 2.
Any comment on that? Does that sound fine for you, Mr. Bellagopoulos?
Mr. Barrett, can you give the numbers again? I missed, I didn't get all of that.
The range you're talking
The
about,
injection rate, yeah, right.
20 to 242 pounds per hour.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
Were you able to capture that, Madam Clerk?
Yes.
Okay. All
The
right,
district is prepared to proceed with closings.
thank you. Okay, sir, are you ready for closing,
Yes.
which will include the 6 findings?
Yeah, if we could just take control of the screen. Okay. So we went through, in my opening, I went through the elements. You've heard from a few different witnesses. You've asked some really good questions. And at first, I just want to thank the board for taking the time today and the thoughtfulness of the questions, for listening and you know, being detail oriented and making sure you understand the issues. I think that we've presented evidence that satisfies the standard. I think, you know, even in your questions have helped draw that out. And so let me just go through that quickly. You know, based on the way that the facility does record and monitor, there will be non-compliance as of tomorrow. And this would result in essentially taking a 3-day outage and over $1 million in cost to AS, but there's no impact. There's no environmental impact associated with that. And this is simply some gunk that has to get removed from the catalyst bed. And you heard Mr. Perez say, look, they're going to do a deep clean this time. So we have every reason to expect that deep cleaning is going to bring this back to normal, where the annual cleanings cause the differential pressure to be within normal operating parameters throughout the year. Curtailment is not an option here. I don't even know if CalISO would accept that, but if they did, it would also result in over $1 million in costs. So again, we're not talking about excess emissions. AS is already complying with its Title V permit, has not had any problems with its Title V permit. And, you know, we've worked with the district counsel's office, and I want to thank, in addition to the hearing board, the district counsel's office for being responsive, very responsive. I want to thank the number of the attorneys who have responded to me in the evening, over the weekend, with questions, and then, submitting the stipulated conditions to the board over the weekend so that we could get here as soon as possible before the facility suffers any non-compliance. So AS is fully willing to abide by those conditions. It's going to continue to abide by its Title V permit, and there are no environmental impacts. So that concludes my remarks. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Manwaring?
Thank you so much. I appreciate the comments, Mr. Perchahern. Subject to the proposed conditions in Exhibit A as modified with the addition of Condition 5, the district is unopposed to the requested variance.
Thank you. Okay, and we can start deliberation. I'm going to go ahead and start that. Having come from the utility industry myself, I'm very familiar with annual maintenance and how much time, effort, and money that it takes to come down for the period of time that's normally required on an annual maintenance, and how important it is to the overall reliability contributing to the grid. And the fact that in that sense, you are an essential service to the public, because as was testified to, you're not just a peaker plant, but you're also being called upon on a daily basis, which makes you part of the base load. So I feel that the 6 findings can be made on this case. The fact that there has been such due diligence on the part of AES as well as the district, and working together to get the best conditions that we could before us today. I commend both the district and AES on working on it right up until the hearing today. So with that, I feel that we can make the 6 findings, and that in fact this variance should be passed. Mr. Pearman.
I concur. The reason we really discussed in the first phase as well, and they do meet the 6 findings.
Mr. Balagopalan.
Yeah, I do agree too that we can make the 6 finding. I also want to point out something, that even though the petitioner said it's just a maintenance issue, the delta P is an indication of something is built up on the catalyst, and I'm glad they're continuously monitoring it, just like a filter in the house. You know, it's plugged up, you're going to use more. You need to draw more fuel and air, and and that's why I asked about the back pressure, whether there's some cascading impact on the operational end because of the buildup, and they're keeping the eye on it, which is good. I'm not sure at what point it becomes an issue, but the fact that it's continuously being monitored and they're getting data, that's a good thing because, it's an indicator of something is, it's a buildup. It's just like the filter in a car, it's clogged up, you got to replace it. But it affects the operation of their unit. So that I just want to throw it out there. So not saying, oh, and I agree, you can, it doesn't make sense to do it now when you got a planned outage in April and you can do the better cleaning and better examination of the catalyst, but it's just what I was going to say, don't downplay some of the indicators is all I just wanted to indicate. But other than that, I think with the condition proposed by the district, which, to get the ammonia's injection rate, because again, you have continuous monitoring for NOx, so the SEMS will tell you there's an exceedance of the emission limit. There's no SEMS for ammonia, but the flow rate injection, if you exceed that, that means there may be more ammonia slip, and you're limited by condition. I see 5 ppm, but you cannot know it unless you do annual testing. So the flow rate will have to ensure that you stay within the parameter and doesn't exceed the slip rate. While the catalyst is plugged up, and hopefully it doesn't continue to build up during the period before April and become an issue. But 1.7 is not that far from 1.6, so it does not seem to be that an issue as of now. So with that, having said, I do believe we can make the 6 findings because as was pointed out, it will be imminently in violation by tomorrow, and based on the monthly average, compliance with closing would be without a non-compliance beyond the control because there was a gradual buildup of the catalyst, and shutting it down now in lieu of the planned outage seems a little excessive as far as cost and providing much needed electricity to the basin. And the closing of the taking would be without a corresponding benefit because the harm to petitioner outweighs the benefit to air quality. As of now, with all the monitoring, it does not indicate there's any excess emission or exceedance of the NOx limits, only the catalyst delta P. So they've given consideration curtailing operation, and that is actually by monitoring the delta P now on a weekly basis, reporting it to the district, and also the ammonia injection rate. So they're doing that. And there's no excess emission during this period anticipated, and but they will be monitoring because they have the SEMS already in place to monitor the NOx, so that the monitoring will be ongoing. So, and I think as was indicated by counsel from the district that, yeah, if they do exceed those limits, then they might have to seek it's a separate variance if they exceed the limits for NOx or for ammonia injection rate. So yeah, I also agree those 6 findings can be made.
Thank you. Mr. Ali, did you have any comment?
Yes, I'll be very brief. The petitioner, the respondent rather, put forward a very sedulous, as it were, argument. Very meticulous, very thorough, easy to follow, and more specific to the point, they are a vital and integral element to ensuring a continuous stream of energy to our respective communities. They've been honest, and I do believe that the 6 findings have been made, and we can proceed forward. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Okay. Dr. Abraham, did you want to make the motion?
Sure. And I agree also that we find 6 findings. So
Your mic.
sorry about that. Can you hear me now? Great. All right. So I agree. We can also find the 6 findings as stated by Mr. Balagopalan and everyone here. And I also agree with Mr. Ali's statements that he just made, that we appreciate the contribution, especially during these peak hours when we need clean energy or cleaner energy. So appreciate that. So in the matter of AES Alamitos case number 5278.3 for the facility located at 690 North Studebaker Road, Long Beach, California, 90803. Regarding permit numbers 608431 and 608432, regarding the equipment device number C170 and C178. I move that we grant the interim variance as stated in the Exhibit A, the stipulated proposed variance conditions, including the amendment that was proffered, the new, I guess that would be condition 4, and then renumbering to, new condition 5, and then renumbering to 6 for the ultimate one, as stated by Mr. Perry. Let's see if there was anything else we need to include here. And I won't reiterate or re-summarize what Mr. Balagopalan mentioned for all of the 6 findings. So for all of those reasons, I ask that we grant the interim variance as proposed.
Ali seconds.
If I may amend your motion a little bit, I think we may be commencing today, January 30th, and continuing through April 30th or 29th, because 90 days, or until the schedule short variance is held, which is whichever sooner, which is currently scheduled for February 21st, 2024.
Along with Mr. Balagopalan.
And I'll just mention the rules
Yes.
that applies 203B to 2004 F1, 3002 C1, specifically permit condition D 12.11. And there will be no excess emission during this period. That's all I wanted to clarify your motion.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, I second the motion, but under discussion, just a question. If the matter will be heard on February 21st, and we can extend them beyond, why would we not? Why would we hold it to February 21st and not in March or April?
In reference to the time frame of the short variance.
Exactly.
Is that what your question is?
No, yes, ma'am.
Okay, I believe that's the amount that before they go into the request for the regular variance, but that's already been established and there's a date for it. Is
Yes.
there not?
There is a date for
Madam
the short
Clerk.
variant calendar, which is
Right.
February 21st, I believe.
Uh-huh. So
That is
maybe we
correct.
don't understand your question exactly, Mr. Ali.
Right, so how much time would they be extended?
The interim variance is good for 90 days.
Right, so if today is 1:30, then why would we not come back in 90 days?
No, because there's a scheduled hearing for the short variance. So if they come sooner than the end date, then we hear it and then we grant them the short variance, basically.
Yeah, well, I think Mr. Lee's point is if we gave them an interim for 90, they wouldn't need to come back at all.
Thank you, Mr. Pearman.
About that possibility.
The
you.
district's position is that would be circumventing public notice.
Exactly.
Did you hear that, Mr. Ali?
So, and why would it be circumventing public notice?
Because
I'm sorry.
No,
It's required that a noticed hearing be heard. This was an interim, no notice to the public. At the time that the petition was received, a noticed hearing was scheduled. Notice went out. The parties, that notice was done based on the fact that they may or may not have gotten this interim. Had they not gotten this interim, and even though they do have the interim, a noticed hearing has to be scheduled and heard for public,
so
even though
once,
the public has that option now as well.
once a hearing has been noticed, so I can get this clear, a hearing's been noticed, and there's no provision within the Health and Safety Code which would allow it to be heard beyond the date it was noticed of February 21st.
That's not true. That's not what I said.
Okay, so that Mr. Pearman understands what I'm saying. So then why would we, Ms. Manwari said it would circumvent the public notification process. How would it circumvent the process, Ms. Manwari?
Because there was no notice for this hearing.
Hold on, Ms. Manwari, how would it circumvent the process?
We are, wait a minute, we are actually at this point closed. We would have to take 3 people to vote to reopen this so you could
Okay.
ask your question.
No, it's fine. No, we could proceed forward, but I'd rather have the code and read from the code as
Well,
opposed
I
to
would like your
opinion.
question to be answered, Mr. Ali. I don't want to not let you ask your question. I'm just following procedure that since we already had closing statements, that at that point, it's been declared closed, so we want to be able to reopen it to allow you to ask your question. Okay?
No problem.
So if there are three members of this board who want to reopen it to allow Mr. Ali to ask his question?
Yes.
Okay, so there are three so moved. Go ahead, Mr. Ali.
And Ms. Monroe, can you explain and can you cite the provision of the Health and Safety Code?
California Health and Safety Code, Section 42-351C, which states that the hearing board shall not grant any interim variance which is being sought to avoid the notice and hearing requirements of Section 4826.
So if we're granting them 90 days, then why don't we be specific and just grant them 3 weeks or 2 weeks? If they're coming back on the 21st.
Are you asking Ms. Van Mooring that question?
Yes.
Mr. Ali, the hearing board, clerk's office is who schedules the hearings. The board can grant up to 90 days. And prior boards, they would grant only up to the time prior to the notice. They would not grant the full 90 days, but it is up to the board. So since you all have decided to grant them the full 90 days, or until, whichever comes first is the language that is in all of the minute orders. So if the hearing date comes before that 90 days, then the hearing should go forward that time. And if there is a request to extend within that 90 days, it has to be approved by the chair.
Are you okay with that, Mr. Ali? Or do
Yeah,
you
I'm
still
okay
have
with-
a?
No, I'm okay with proceeding forward with respect. to
Okay,
closing the
all
meeting.
right, thank you for your question. All right, so we can go ahead then and go to the vote. We have already had the motion and the second. Any other discussion on the motion? Okay, if not, how do you vote? Mr. Valagobalan?
Yes.
Mr. Pearman? Dr. Abraham?
Aye.
Mr. Ali?
Aye.
And I also vote aye, so unanimous that you do get your variance. And I just wanted to also mention to thank you for your service, sir, Mr. Perez. I have two members in my family who are also from the Navy and now contracting back to the Navy, as well as my dad was a Marine. So I do value your service and the contribution that you're able to take on to a new career. So thank you for that. And thank you both sides very much for working together, even during this hearing, to make sure that we had all the conditions that we needed to see to proceed. So thank you as well.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. And the matter is concluded and we can then go on to our consent calendar. Thank you for appearing today. All righty. Okay, with that, let's go on to the consent calendar for Orange County Waste and Recycling, case number 5710-6. This is for a short variance regarding rules 203, 1150.1, and 3002. Before we do that, we do have some exhibits. And the first one is the joint stipulation to place the matter on consent, coming from the district, Madam Clerk? Coming from the petitioner? Okay, so we can call it one or A? Yeah, okay, so one. All right, exhibit one is the stipulation. Exhibit two is the declaration of Jeff Arbor, I'm assuming. And then the proposed findings and decision for an order granting the short variance and proposed order, that's coming from petitioner. Okay, so that's going to be three. All right. Anything else that we had, Madam Clerk? That was it. Okay. Okay. All right. And in this case, it's a matter of the Orange County landfill, the Bowerman landfill, which is a municipal solid waste landfill. And it is operated by the Orange County Waste and Recycling. This landfill, they do accept the berries, they do accept as well as bury the solid waste, which does result in the continual production of landfill gas, which is the issue here, and required by regulation of the landfill gas is collected by a system of wells and pipes and is conveyed to the flares for destruction. And this is in regards flare number 6. And any other comments we want to continue from there? Mr. Balagopalan or Mr. Pearman?
Oh, no.
Okay.
No, specifically, I think the issue is the flare, which is under application 614468 and condition number 4, that they should be source tested within 180 days and the report to be submitted within 180 days. They have some operational issue with the flares, and it does appear that they need to may have to replace the burners on the flares so that so they cannot fulfill the condition requirement to do the test and submit the report within 180 days. So they're asking for time to do the repair and then do the source test and then submit the report 45 days later after the source test, which is what's reflected in the condition. So, and again, this is a new flare. It's the new type of flare with the low NOx standard. So they have, I think even the manufacturers have, it's kind of new. So they, hopefully that's the issue with the burners, then they can get it restarted and tested, and they should be and demonstrate compliance with the limits, NOx limits.
Mr. Pearman?
Yeah, I believe that we can incorporate, reference the exhibits you just referenced, and they've met the standards and requirements for the variance, and it should be granted.
Thank you. Any other comments or statements? Okay, with that, I'll entertain a motion. Okay, in the matter of Orange County Waste and Recycling, located at 11002 B Canyon Access Road in Irvine, 92602, I move that we grant the petition for a variance and a short variance, and this will include the equipment that was discussed, flare number 6, application permit number AN 614468. This is in regards to rules 1150.1, condition F2A, excuse me, rule A and condition for AN 614468, condition 24, the Title 5 permit, section K, and that would be number 8, and rule 3002 C1 and rule 203B. I'm losing my voice here. And that would include the exhibits that were presented. And with that, there are no excess emissions that will be expected. I believe that it also includes the conditions that are on the back of the petition, 1 through 6. Okay. And that concludes my motion.
Second.
Clarification, I think that maybe want to reference the condition in the document they gave in the finding and decision document, which is number 3.
Oh, yes, number 3, there was,
I think it was.
Yeah.
And you didn't, the period of the variance from today till the end of April 29th
yes,
for the short.
right?
yes, yes, it is. Yes. Okay. So do we have a second on that? I didn't hear you, Mr. Ali. Did you second that?
second.
Okay, thank you. Any other discussion on this motion? Okay, seeing none, we can go ahead and vote on that. Mr. Ali, how do you vote?
Aye.
Dr. Abraham?
Aye.
Mr. Pearman?
Aye.
Mr. Balagopalan?
Yes.
And I also vote aye. And so therefore it is passed. The short variance is passed for Orange County Waste and Recycling. All right, and I don't believe we have any other business for the day. With that, we are adjourned. Thank you, everybody, for appearing today. Thank you, Ms. Manwaring.